Thank you for joining the Innovation World Young Collaborators Podcast Series. My name is Suchita Srinivasan. I'm a junior from Cheshire High School in Cheshire, Connecticut. Some things about myself include that I'm an inventor. I've created various inventions regarding domestic violence, a condition that I've had since I was very young and also is very prevalent among society, known as torticollis. But I also have other passions such as playing the flute. I'm an avid reader and a podcaster as well. With that, I'll be introducing our interviewee today, Aarin Bothra. Hi, Aarin. How are you doing? It's so nice to meet you.
I'm
Um,
doing good.
I've heard so much about you. I see you've done a lot in your high school career, which genuinely is so impressive. I just wanted to ask for everyone who's listening, tell us about yourself. Like, what do you like to do? What are your hobbies? What are your passions? What kind of interests you?
Yeah, and thank you so much for having me on this episode of the podcast. I'm really glad to share a little bit about myself because I've done a couple of these podcasts and they're always such a great experience. So as you said, my name is Aarin Bothra and I'm 15 years old and I'm a junior in high school at Oswego East High School, which is in Oswego, Illinois. That's like an hour away from Chicago. And then a little bit about me. I've been really passionate about the environment, which is what this episode's about. I've been passionate about the environment since a young age. I've always really loved like nature and like we've had a garden at home that each year I would take a big interest in or going outside and like looking around in nature. So that's something that's developed into a greater passion of mine as the years have gone by. I've gotten more interested in the environment and through different like STEM related different in like interests such as like engineering, activism, things like that. But other things that I enjoy, I really like math. I like all STEM related subjects really. I enjoy astronomy. And another one of my really big hobbies is learning languages. I'm currently learning Japanese and Spanish, but it's something that I really enjoy. And yeah, that's a little bit about me. In the future, I hope to be an environmental engineer, but I also want to minor in either like linguistics or East Asian languages. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
That's super cool. I love how you have an interest and then you kind of took that and made something out of it as you grew up. And I also love how you kind of explore different areas as well, not just like environment like you mentioned, but also linguistics. That's super cool. But kind of just diving deeper into your passion for environment, what kind of initially sparked your interest in sustainability and environmental projects, such as Algae Air and your Seeds of Hope that you
Yeah.
have?
Thank you. That's a great question. I think it really came from we'll talk about like Seeds of Hope first because that's the one I started first and I got interested in first. So I think it was around like my last year of middle school. I had a teacher that was extremely like hands-on. She was our science teacher in middle school, and she was really all about getting us interested in different like STEM related like pursuits and really showing us what we could do as young students. So I had joined the environmental club at my middle school, and that teacher, our science teacher, is the one who ran it. And she told me a lot about the state of Illinois' natural prairies. So Illinois is obviously a state in the United States of America, and we are known as the prairie state. That's our kind of nickname. And prairies are a type of natural like plant. They're a type of natural habitat, and prairie plants are native to Illinois. A lot of our land, in the past, used to be made up of prairie plants. But what my teacher told me, and kind of showed me was that prairie plants are actually they aren't as abundant now as they were before because a lot of them have been destroyed and prairies have been destroyed in general due to things like urbanization and like urbanization, the creation of steel factories and farming. They've been cut down, burned, and just destroyed in general. So that was an issue that she was really passionate about, and that was an issue that I heard from her, but I didn't really think too much about it. I thought, yeah, that's like a horrible problem, but it was just kind of in the back of my mind. And then a little bit after that, after I had moved on in the summer of that year, when I was transitioning from middle school to high school, I realized that in my neighborhood, every time after spring and in the summer, when it would like rain, even if it was like a light rain to a thunderstorm, there would always be huge like puddles or just ponds kind of that would form everywhere around our neighborhood. So our yard would be full of big ponds and puddles that would pool up in front of the grass, and they wouldn't go away for weeks or even months sometimes. And then if you just drove around our community, you'd see that there's like valleys and dips places. There's like hills and dips. Those dips would fill up and they would turn into ponds where like birds would sit and swim in front of them. So that was really interesting to me because I was wondering why all this water wasn't just being absorbed into the ground and why it stayed pooled up for like weeks to months at a time. So that was something that really interested me. And that was something that I did a little bit more research on. And when I did a little bit of more research, I actually found out that the reason for all of this is surprisingly related to prairie plants. And that was a connection that I had never really thought of before. The reason is that prairie plants in Illinois, especially, they have extremely deep roots. They have very big root system. They can go for multiple feet long. Obviously, the grass that you grow in your yard, if you just pull it out, the roots are a couple inches long. But these prairie plants have roots that are so much bigger than that. So when they've been destroyed, before they were destroyed, they used to absorb a lot of the water. They would absorb a lot of the rainfall because their root systems wouldn't just be so shallow and superficial. They would go extremely deep into the ground. So they're absorbing all of that rainwater. But now we've replaced that all with regular grass that we grow on our lawns and the turf grass, artificial turf, things like that. And that has essentially led to a lot of this water pooling because it can't be absorbed into the ground. So it leads to flooding, things like that. The loss of prairie plants has also led to droughts. It leads to other environmental challenges. The destruction of prairies destroys habitats for animals, and it just disrupts the ecosystem as a whole because a lot of our ecosystem is prairie land. So that was a connection between something I noticed in my community and I saw directly happening and something that my science teacher had told me about. And I think if she hadn't told me, I would have never taken that much of an interest in it. And it was a connection that really kind of interested me because I felt like it was not something that a lot of people didn't know. It wasn't a very like common knowledge. And even though my science teacher had mentioned it, I hadn't really connected with the issue until I saw it directly firsthand. And that was something that really inspired me. So from there, I went on to co-found Seeds of Hope with a friend from high school. And essentially, what Seeds of Hope is, it's a nonprofit that we founded for environmental activism. And we're trying to combat the issue of replanting Illinois prairies and just spreading awareness about the issue. So how Seeds of Hope solves and combats this issue is we create something called seed libraries, which, as the name suggests, it's a very common idea that's present in a lot of parts of the US and obviously around the world. But it's containers where you put in a bunch of different seed packets. So in each, we have like a container, and our container has drawers in it. And each drawer has maybe 10 to 20 seed packets. And there's a bunch of different varieties of native plants. There's 16 in each seed library. So there's a bunch of different varieties of native plants that are prairie plants. And essentially what we do with these seed libraries, they're not too big. They're like probably 12 inches by 12 inches, or around that dimension. We take them, we create them, we pack all of the seeds, create the instructions for them, and then we put them in local public high schools and public libraries. And by doing so, it allows people that go and frequent those areas, which is like a large part of the community. A lot of people go to our high schools. All students do, teachers, educators of any kind. And the library is obviously a place where a lot of community members gather. People who are going through those areas, they can pick up seeds, our seed packets, and then they can go home and plant them in their backyard, their local community. And in doing so, not only are they, first of all, learning about the issue of prairies themselves, but by planting them, they're helping and benefiting the environment. They're replanting prairie plants, and they're gaining knowledge and awareness, and they're getting an easy way to combat an issue that is not so easy to get involved in. Obviously, in Illinois, there's a lot of prairie restoration effort. There's things like cleanups, but for the everyday community member, first of all, it's not an issue that's really made like it's not an issue that many people are aware of, as with a lot of environmental issues. And this is just a very easy way for them to get involved. And that's really our goal, is to foster individual environmental activism, but also wide scale community action. And that is Seeds of Hope. So it was a nonprofit that we founded. I think it's been about a year and a half or 2 years ago. And now we are at 10 to 15, or sorry, 5 seed library locations, and we have gained over $10,000 in funding, and we're continuing to expand now to 10 to 15 seed libraries over this next year. So it's a really exciting project that I'm so happy to have seen grown in such a great way. And I'm really proud of the impact it's making on our community. And to the second part of your question, algae air was another thing that I did once I got into high school. So I was really captivated by the idea of like prairie plants and how I could help solve this issue and do my part to combat climate change. But another thing that I learned in my freshman year is that our school is actually, my school, which is Oswego East High School, it actually has some poor air quality issues. And the reason for this is that it's surrounded by 5 different coal factories that are around Illinois, and they cause a lot of high levels of particulate matter and different air quality issues in our school. And me and a group of friends learned this, and after doing a little bit of research, we learned that this directly causes negative effects for health of teachers, students, and educators. So this was an issue that we decided, well, it's affecting our school, it's affecting the community and the people we see every day. So we decided to create Algae Air, which is an algae-based automated biofiltration system. It's an invention that we designed, and we submitted our invention idea to the Lemelson MIT InventTeam Challenge, which is run by a branch of the Massachusetts Institutes of Technology called Lemelson MIT. They support youth innovation. And this program chooses 10 teams nationally. And we were chosen as one of the 10 teams. And we received $7,500 of funding to create our invention. And it was a year-long process. We worked with a mentor from LMIT, and it was really just an amazing process that I'm sure we'll get into later in the podcast. But our invention, we ended up making a full-on prototype. We tested in schools, we got feedback, and we presented it at MIT's Eureka Fest. So really, I don't think there was like a big defining moment that sparked my interest in all of these different environmental issues. I think it was just the incremental growth of my interest in different parts and aspects of environmental issues that I've seen in my community, and that I've realized I can do my own part to change.
That's so impressive. Um, I really love how you kind of like pulled from different stories that like your environmental teacher, your science teacher told you when you were in middle school, and then also kind of just the things that you've noticed surrounding and what's happening in your community to kind of create your change, both with like a nonprofit and with the algae air invention that you created, which is really amazing. So kind of going into more of about your algae air invention. So what was the process for designing it? And like how did it go to how was the process for filing your provisional patent? And then how did this experience impact your understanding of innovation and then intellectual property as well?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think the provisional patent, which was something they encouraged us to do in the program, was a really big part of like a lot of the stuff that I learned throughout the program, as an invent team. So I was our team's technical lead, and essentially when we had submitted our proposal, it was just an idea. We hadn't actually built anything. So as with a lot of inventing stories, and that I'm sure you've known and like experienced firsthand, our first idea was nothing like what we ended up at the end. Even our first prototype was not very similar to our proposal. So essentially, after we submitted our proposal and it was accepted and we got our funding, we got an LMIT mentor who we were very thankful for. So we worked a lot with him to help, first of all, refine our idea. We did refine parts of our invention, how the microcontrollers would work to automate the algae and make it easier for the user to grow the algae, which would then clean the air while it's growing. We had to refine a lot of the circuitry that was going in, and then also the physical design of the device. Our original design was a little bit more bulky, and it wasn't very like well thought out for your like user experience and things like that. So that was something we worked on a lot before we even started building anything. We refined our design. We created a good plan of action. So then from there, it was a lot of different fabricating techniques that I hadn't really done before. I had like done 3D printing before, but that was about it. So after we had made the whole design in computer aided design, so CAD, we decided that we were going to make the frame of the device out of wood. So we actually went and used our school's workshop, and we cut out a lot of the design through laser cutting, big panels of wood. And that was something that I had never done before. So it was a really great experience to learn, because I think it was around like 7 out of 8 of our team members had never laser cut before. And that was a really great experience. We got to learn so much. And that helped us put together the first prototype of our device. We put together a frame using laser cut parts. We also 3D printed some parts that we had designed, and then we had to do a lot of the circuitry. For our first design, it was pretty rudimentary. We didn't A lot of the circuitry was just done with like breadboards and things like that. We didn't go like creating custom like circuit boards and things like that. We just wanted to prove our concept. So that was like our first step. I think the biggest thing that I took away from that is not to be afraid to experiment with new tools and new design techniques, but then also to just keep taking the first step forward. Like I think I was kind of afraid of like, what should we do next? I don't really know if this is gonna work or not. But I think something big that I learned is just to take the next step and to keep going. And that eventually brought us towards our first prototype, which we then continued to improve on as we kept moving. So after that first prototype, that was like probably 2 or 3 months into the process. We spent obviously the next 9 months of the school year. We continued refining. Each time we would change something about our prototype, we would make it more efficient. We would better the design of it, the stability of it. We would make it easier for the user to use, and we would move further and further towards our ultimate goal, which was to have a working prototype that we're proud of. And that was something that along the way we learned so many different design techniques. We encountered every type of engineering challenge that came with the device. We learned all of these different techniques. We learned problem solving strategies. I learned how to manage budgets and things like that. And it was just a really great experience because you got to take an idea, all the way from an idea and a concept to a finished device that we could use and show people and prove that this idea and this concept does work. So that was something that I think was the biggest takeaway from the journey. And then towards the end, when we had mostly finalized our prototype design and what was going on inside, how the circuitry was going to work, we started filing for a provisional patent. So we work with pro bono lawyers that LMIT helped us find. And we were really grateful for them because obviously they were filing this provisional patent for us for free. But that was actually something that none of us had done before, and not a lot of us knew anything about really. We didn't really know what a provisional patent was. So that's something that we learned a lot about. And I think that's one of the most helpful things of the experience, because obviously with any invention that you create later on in life, you might want to patent it and then license it out, or just protect your idea in the first place because it's your own creation. So we learned that a provisional patent, it's not like a non-provisional patent, which is things that actual inventors use. That's what you get. That goes indefinitely once you have it. A provisional patent essentially is like a door holder. It gives you a year after that. So once you file the provisional patent, you have a year to file a non-provisional one. And in that year, no one can steal your idea or have the same idea as you and get a patent for that. So it gives you like a 1 year placeholder for that. But it was still very involved. We wrote with our lawyers, we worked to write like a 30-page document that detailed all of the enabling technologies about the device, what makes it new, what makes it novel, and how does it work. And not only did I learn how to draw like technical diagrams for the patent, we had to do different like photo tracing techniques to draw out our design. We created flow charts. We also really learned how to describe our ideas in like a concise way that would make sense. And then the legal team would take our idea and they would flesh it out with their legal terminology. So it was really great to learn how to like concisely convey what was unique about our device and what made it something that we can patent. So it was a long patent. I wasn't happy with any of our first designs of like the drawings of our device. They were all very shaky and they weren't very clear. So think it took maybe 5 to 6 different revisions of our drawings to get to the final ones that were included in the patent. Same with a lot of the different like material that was in the patent. It took a lot of revision, and that was the biggest thing I took away from the patent and just the whole process in general. It's that all of these constant small adjustments that we make to our devices and to our invention, they really add up over time, and that's what creates our transformative change. That's what creates the leap from concept to the finished product. It's not like one big groundbreaking jump. It's all these small little incremental changes that we add up together. But in the end, we were able to file our provisional patent. And also from there, I learned just how important intellectual property is, to protecting your invention and really making sure that you are getting credit for the idea that you've worked hard to create. And that's something that definitely all inventors should look out. Sorry. It's definitely something all inventors should look for when they're creating all like their inventions and they're working to get them put on the market or just continue expanding them. And then in the end of the Algae Air experience, we presented at MIT's Eureka Fest, which is a festival that they have every year in the summer where there's a bunch of different events. There's all of the invent teams and there's educators, panelists from MIT. We got to meet one of the people who helped create the original 3D printer, which was something really cool. He was a keynote speaker. But we got to present our device one day to people that were just coming through. There were educators from the state of Massachusetts. There were MIT professors. There were other students who had done the InventTeam program and who were curious about our device. And overall, it was another great experience because we got to learn so much about how to pitch our idea to a crowd. So now this was another format where we had to explain our device and what was going on. And overall, it was just a really nice way to like celebrate our work and everything we had accomplished. And overall, I'm really proud of Algae Air. It has taught me so much about the real life process of inventing, and I'm really grateful to have experienced something like that.
That's amazing. So do you and your team have any plans or goals of pursuing a non-provisional patent or bringing your idea, your design, your device to market, or maybe just licensing out? So does your team have any idea on what you're going to do with that?
Yeah, that's a great question. We had filed our non-provisional patent. I think it hasn't expired yet. So we still have a little bit of time. But something that we've encountered is that non-provisional patents are extremely expensive for high school students because they cost a lot of money to renew over time. Every there's like an increment where the patent office asks you to pay for your patent, because a lot of they want people to hold patents for like using their technology for businesses and for selling them, so that way you should be able to pay the patent fee. But we had looked into that, and I unfortunately don't think it's something that we're going to pursue, just because of how expensive it would be for us as high school students. But we would love to bring Algae Air to a further scale and continue developing it for schools and different high schools in our area and just around the country. We actually did a lot of the business work of Algae Air when we participated in the world's largest business challenge called the Diamond Challenge. It's an entrepreneurship pitch competition. So we took our idea for Algae Air and submitted into that competition, and there were multiple different rounds. But ultimately, it culminated in us being one of the finalists from around the world that were invited to the Diamond Summit, which was in Delaware at the University of Delaware. And there we presented, and we met people from all around the world. It was an amazing experience. We met people from the U.S., from Japan, Greece, all who had created amazing inventions, all of whom were students and who had been working extremely hard. And there, not only did we meet these people, but we also every day we would have a couple pitches, and we pitched to multiple different sets of judges. It was a 3 to 5 minute pitch about Algae Air, and to do that pitch, we had to first develop our financial forecast if we were to turn it into a business, our different like business models, things like that. All of the research we had done, so that was really the business aspect of it. We gained a lot of good business skills, but we ended up placing second out of, I think it was over 500 teams in the social innovation category, and we were awarded scholarship money for that. And that was a really great experience because it helped us like solidify, if we were to bring Algae Air to market, what would we do and how would it work. So a lot of that groundwork is there, and I'm really excited to see how Algae Air will continue expanding in the future. But I don't think we'll be getting a provisional patent for it. We might in the future, but we don't really currently have any plans right now.
No, that makes 100% sense. I think as high schoolers, non-provisional patents are super expensive and it's like a big burden to bear at that age. But I think given how you've kind of understood the process and the business aspects of bringing Algae Air to market in the future, if that's something you want to pursue, it's definitely a possibility. So what were some of the biggest challenge? You kind of talked about the Lemelson MIT InventTeam grant project that you were able to kind of compete in. So what was like the biggest challenges you faced as the technical lead? And how did you work with your team to overcome them?
Yeah, I think there were a lot of challenges, as with anything. But the biggest one was probably just the frustration sometimes of having, as I said, to go back to the drawing board and redesign different parts of the device, redesign how this was going to work because it wasn't working out in our prototype or in our tests or whatever. So that was something that we faced constantly, every single day, every single month, every single week of the process. We would face another challenge that would set us back, where it would feel like we're going backwards, but really we were still going forwards, because even though it felt like, oh no, this didn't work, what are we going to do now? That was actually helping us, because we realized that we can do better than this. And while it was frustrating in the moment, it really helped in the end, because all of these incremental changes that we made to the device, where we made this part better, we made the stability of the device better, we made the circuitry and the design of it better, we made it more appealing to the eyes, things like that, they really added up over time. But obviously in the moment it's frustrating, and it was really hard not to just feel like very unmotivated because nothing was working out for us, it seemed like. But it was a really big challenge, but I really learned that you have to be resilient, and you just have to keep pushing through that, even if you don't really see the light at the end of the tunnel, to just continue inventing. So that was a really big challenge, that it was, I learned that it's okay to like fail sometimes, and obviously that our mistakes make us better. But also a couple of the other mistakes, and not mistakes, sorry, the other like challenges that we faced came from different parts of the device, because it wasn't just all about creating the device. We also had to create a social media. We had to do different like outreach about our device. We also had to present our device. We had a mid-grant technical review where we presented to our school community, and we had MIT professors watch through Zoom. So there were a lot of different things about how are we going to present our device, and things like that didn't just relate to the device itself. And that was also very challenging, because a lot of us hadn't worked with a lot of these different things before, but it was also great to learn something new and experience these challenges that only made us better at these skills in the end.
I definitely relate as an inventor myself, going back and trying to like decompose like what your project or what that prototype did well and then what it didn't, and then going back and identifying and analyzing and fixing the different issues is something that's extremely challenging but also really rewarding once you have figured it out. So I completely relate. And Kudos to you and your team for being able to overcome those challenges. So, kind of continuing on this topic of environmental activism, you've kind of been able to tackle it from the side of creating an invention and creating a technological solution to the problem, but also on the side of your community and helping your community out by providing these seed packets through your nonprofit. So, I want to dive into your role as a policy drafting member on the Youth Advisory Council. So, how does this role shape your approach and understanding of addressing environmental issues through legislation?
Mhm. That's one of my like most favorite things to do as a member of my local youth advisory council. It's really fun to draft different types of legislation and really learn how the process works. So a little bit of background, I joined our youth advisory council last March, so I'm still a relatively new member. It hasn't been like a full year yet. But I've still learned so much. So essentially what a youth advisory council is we work under our local house representative. So it's Representative Kifowitz. She works in the House of Representatives for the Illinois state. And she is, as a House member, her job is to work for our district and propose legislation that benefits and works for the people that live here. So our youth advisory council is run by her team, and we essentially what we do every year is we create a couple bills. And bills are pieces of legislation, laws that we want to get passed in Illinois that relate to different topics that we've researched and found that in our community, it's something that can be solved and it's something that needs solving. So what I really love about the Youth Advisory Council is it's something that gives such a powerful voice to such young people. It gives high schoolers such a good way to express their views on what we should be doing because obviously young people are our next generation and they'll also be people. So it gives us experience, but it also gives us a voice to tell our opinions and to voice what we want to see in our community. So I joined in March, and our new policy like drafting session, we were working over the summer to think of some bill ideas, and we'll be sending them in a few weeks off to the representative to hopefully get introduced into the General Assembly of Illinois. So one of the things that I focus on, kind of like with as with Algae Air and Seeds of Hope, is the environment. It was something I was really passionate about. So when I joined, I decided that I want to try and write a bill that addresses it. So there's so many environmental issues that need solving, but I wanted to write a bill that address some kind of environmental issue that I've seen in my community, because it was another way that I wanted to further this interest that I have. I was really passionate about it. I wasn't feeling very like passionate. A lot of the members have different passions. Some people are passionate about different issues like immigration, mental health, school, education. There's so many different issues. Each member is well versed in multiple different different like areas, and they want to write bills about different things. So I really wanted to focus on the environment. So when I joined, I learned first all about legislation, how to write a bill as a high schooler. Obviously, it's not very easy. It's something that takes a lot of work and that people spend their whole lives learning how to do. So I learned like very rudimentary, like what the process looks like. And then I started researching different environmental bills. That I think there's a need for in our community. And I ended up doing one about writing one about artificial turf grass, which is used in a lot of places for decoration, because it's easier to like maintain in some people's minds than regular grass, or looks nicer, things like that. It also has a very negative and a very dark side about how badly it affects the environment due to just various properties of turf grass. Obviously, it kind of relates to how we're removing prairie plants and adding grass. Similarly, now we're removing that grass and adding plastic. So it obviously is like a cascade effect, and it's even worse than just regular grass. So that was something I was really interested in about, and I ended up writing a bill on that and taking measures to restrict that in Illinois. And that bill is something I've been working on with our group, with the other members on the Youth Advisory Council for the last couple of months. We've reached out to different advocacy groups like the Illinois Environmental Council and our local Sierra Club chapters. And we've learned so much. It's been an amazing experience. We looked at bills from different parts of the country in different states, where we've seen something similar done. We learned what worked well for them, what didn't work well for them. We learned how to talk to different interest groups in our community, and we ended up writing this bill that was a culmination of hours of hard work, and we're still working on it right now. We're going to continue improving it, and then we're going to hope that it'll be introduced into the General Assembly and pass sometime later next year in the spring. But even though we haven't fully completed the process, and though I'm still a new member, one of the main things that I learned from this is really the power of legislation. and how different it is from advocacy, like environmental advocacy. Essentially, I learned that legislation is a lot about like compromises. Just because you want to like ban this or get rid of this, it doesn't really work just because of how many different political groups there are and political interests, how many people, while this might be a great idea, it might be horrible for the environment, maybe removing it will cause such a big economic burn on our economy or on different groups that it wouldn't actually make any sense, and that you'll be harming more people than you help. So one of the biggest things that I learned was how to create a bill with compromises that's balanced, so that you're helping everyone, because you're balancing out things that would, just like by removing artificial turf, obviously that would be very helpful, but that also causes a big downside in terms of like economics and things like that. So it's very important to learn how to balance that. And that was something that I was really important for me to learn. But even more broadly than just legislation, I just learned, like, it felt like a really eye-opening moment, because I saw how many different ways there are to get involved in the same interest and same passion that you have. I've gotten involved in the environment through legislation, advocacy, engineering, and it really showed me that each of these ways comes with their own new things that you learn about the same passion that you have. So I've learned so much about the world of environmental issues and things like that through legislation, that I want to continue exploring different ways that I can further my interest for the environment. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I've taken away from working at the Youth Advisory Council.
That's awesome. It's so inspiring. I think for a high schooler to be part of the legislative process and trying to introduce bills in your state is absolutely amazing. For the sake of time, I will be kind of wrapping up this interview with one last question. It's going to be a little bit more lighthearted. So, with all the things that you're doing, how do you recognize when you're approaching burnout, and what steps do you take to kind of take a break and recharge?
Yeah, I think all of this is it can end up being stressful sometimes because of different things happening concurrently. And that's true with anyone doing their passion, or just, and a lot of students in high school. A lot of our like classes and things like that, they can get really stressful. Because you have lots of tests at one time, you're doing this extracurricular and this extracurricular, and they're conflicting. And I think burnout is something that I really experienced, like after like intense periods of time where a lot of things are conflicting at once. That usually happens around like holidays or like big deadlines. So around winter break, when there's all these midterms tests, around like the end of school when there's a lot of final, and then around the holidays when people are going on vacation, so you have to get things done before these deadlines. So I really realize that when I feel like unmotivated to do anything, it feels like why am I doing this, and I feel really tired and just like unmotivated. And I realize that's kind of like my like done point, like I'm done at that point. And that's like where I feel kind of burned out. So I think it's really important to realize like what makes you feel burned out, and then how do you realize that, and then how do you get back from that point to a regular point. So for me, it really comes in the form of like just taking a few days off, like doing any studying, or just like doing extracurriculars. Just take like a few days of like time to like look after yourself. So I really like to do that by doing like my other hobbies and like focusing on them. I really like to read. So I like to read a lot in those few days. And then I also really love language learning, as I said. So I like to focus on one of the languages that I'm learning, and like do a deep dive into like song lyrics, or learn a new grammar point or something like that. And I think by doing things that you enjoy that aren't as stressful, obviously I enjoy all this environmental stuff, but doing that where there's not like deadlines or a lot of pressure, I think that's a way that I've like been able to come back from burnout. So I think it's really two parts. One, you have to recognize it, and then the second part, you have to be able to come back from it. And I think that's something that everyone should focus on and really learn how to do while they're in high school, because I feel like that's a natural part of life going forward, with work and college and things like that. And I think learning these skills in high school is just a really great skill. So I thank you so much for asking that question, because I think it's very beneficial for everyone listening. And I just want to thank you for all of your questions. They've been very like insightful, and they've really helped me realize like just like my passion for the environment and all the things that I've done and how I can convey them to other people. So I want to thank you for all of that.
Thank you so much for everything, for answering all of my questions, and for kind of sharing to everyone who's listening, your thought process and your mindset when it comes to your passions and how you approach problems that you see around you, and also like how you take care of yourself, even in spite of all the things that you do. So thank you so much. Thank you, Aaron, for this interview, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us today at the Innovation World Young Collaborators Podcast Series. You can listen to more podcasts by visiting innovationworld.org. Thank you.